After experimenting with creating my own JPEG recipes on the Olympus Pen F with the creative dial, I was unsuccessful. So I decided to take the red pill and go down the Micro Four Thirds wormhole to discover the best JPEG recipes out there for Micro Four Thirds mount cameras, specifically the Pen F and the other cameras that share the creative dial. And it was here, buried deep in the archives, that I found this post from Gareth B, posted in 2017 on the Micro Four Thirds forum.
This guy's a genius.
So I want to put Gareth B's JPEG recipe to the test. He doesn't know I'm doing this. I thought this would be fun. And we're going to compare this JPEG recipe against the straight out of camera RAW files from the Olympus Pen F, as well as comparing the color profile to that of real Kodachrome film images, which is actually a challenge in itself, trying to find similar enough shots. Let's see if it works.
It's impossible, but doable.
Full disclosure, obviously, I don't know Gareth B. Gareth B doesn't know me. I don't even know the man's last name.
Bond. James Bond.
But this JPEG recipe, since I've actually tried it, is fantastic. Now, to see the standard of Kodachrome 25 and other Kodachrome film stocks, let's take a quick look at some examples so we can see what we're kind of aiming for here. Here I found a handful of different images that were shot on Kodachrome 25 slide film. Some of these images weren't specifically credited as Kodachrome 25, but they look very similar to the Kodachrome 25 shots in terms of color profile, so we're going to assume they are 25. And depending on the lighting conditions, as you'd expect, the color temperature changes and the overall look of the film might appear to be different. So there's not going to be one perfect look across different lighting conditions and times of day, and that's something we should bear in mind when we're comparing the slide film to this JPEG recipe, because digital files and film are famously not the same.
It's not the same, is it? Of course it isn't the same, you idiot.
All of the images that I've been shooting using this JPEG recipe were shot on my Olympus Pen F with the Lumix 25mm f1.7, and this gives us that standard 50mm focal length field of view on full frame terms, which is kind of similar to the standard 50mm lens you would get on most film cameras back in the day. Not that I would know, I was born in the 90s.
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
This JPEG recipe is of course using the creative dial, and we're using it in the color profile. So not anything else, just change the creative dial to color, and this is where we're going to put in our settings. So we're going to start with the curves. And the curves, we're going to have our shadows at -5 and highlights at -2. Then set midtones to +3 or +2, as Gareth says. Then under the color wheel, like in the color profile, have yellow at -2, orange at +1, red at +1, red/pink at -1, magenta at -1, purple at +2, blue at -3, aqua at -2, cyan at -4, mint green at -4, green at -4, and then lime at -5. And then in your overall picture profile settings in the main menu of the Pen F, we're going to set contrast to +2, and then our white balance offset to A -2 and G +2. Before we get into these before and afters though, we have a quick word from our sponsor, Squarespace. If you don't have a website for your photography, you are missing out. It's your unique home on the internet for your fans to enjoy and support your work. Squarespace removes all of the headaches. You can even choose to create a fully custom website with Blueprint AI, tailored to your style and personality. You can update your fans easily via an email newsletter using Squarespace's email campaign tools. There you can write, publish, and view your analytics right in your Squarespace dashboard. Try Squarespace for free at squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/GeorgeHolden to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Let's start by comparing our out-of-camera RAW files with the JPEG recipe. The first thing you'll notice that I noticed was the difference in contrast. While the RAW files produce a much flatter image, the Kodachrome JPEGs have much more depth in the shadows, and I think look more pleasing out of camera. In terms of colour, I was actually surprised to see that this recipe actually produces slightly less saturated images compared to the RAW files. Typically you'd think of RAW files being the flatter, desaturated files. However, in this particular case, because of the Kodachrome recipe and the characteristics, we actually have the more contrasty files, but slightly less saturated. And also in the RAW files, I thought it was interesting to see there's actually a bit of a green tint going on. This isn't across everything, but as I said, I didn't correct anything in the RAW files before exporting them as JPEGs. So there could be some slight differences in white balance here that we're not seeing in the Kodachrome. What I really like about this JPEG recipe compared to the RAW files is this kind of like classic Chrome look. Of course it is Kodachrome, and I really love the way that this like enhances every little bit of contrast. When you see brighter midtones or brighter highlights, they just feel like they really pop straight away without any unnecessary editing. The way the midtones are pushed with like minimal saturation can just leave things feeling very clean and like classic in like a very satisfying way that I enjoy. If you're enjoying this video and haven't yet subscribed to the channel, then remember to hit the subscribe button down below and drop a like on this video to share these videos with more people. Now moving on from comparing with the RAW files, let's compare some of these images with the Kodachrome JPEG recipe to those of actual Kodachrome slide film. The biggest thing to note here is just the differences between the characteristics of actual analog film and a full third size digital sensor from the mid-2010s. It's going to be a world of difference, and one of the main differences you're going to see here is dynamic range. Dynamic range has always been one of the biggest obstacles of digital sensors, especially the older and smaller digital sensors, when compared to film from 8mm, 16mm, 35mm, or of course 70mm. You're going to see a world of differences here. So since shooting with this JPEG recipe, I've loved the colours and everything out of it, but my main problem was actually the overexposure and maybe the white balance a little bit. So I have a couple of tweaks that I want to make here, but I'm not going to be able to do this as well as Gareth B. These are just my amateur changes compared to his genuinely quite good recipe.
Rick fucking Dalton.
So my main tweaks here are to combat that overexposure of the midtones and highlights, and with that we're going to change the contrast, we're going to change that to +1, and then our curves are going to have our shadows at -5, and then our midtones at 0 or +1. Then our highlights at -2 or -3. And I found this has like not changed the overall look of the shots, but it's just helped me to retain some of that highlight detail where I don't want to risk blowing out highlights, especially if I don't have much time to manually adjust my exposure. And then when it comes to the white balance, I would actually leave the offset as the same, but in some situations, just set the white balance to cloudy. Since I've been shooting photos for this video, I've also been feeling a little bit tempted to try and create my own Kodachrome preset, but I might just put this out as a free preset. So if you're interested in seeing a free Kodachrome preset from me sometime soon, drop a comment down below letting me know. Because I've kind of made one at the moment, but it could probably do with a few different revisions. And once I've got enough test images, I'll put something out and then you guys can go and download it for free. But just drop a comment down below to let me know you're actually interested in something like that. And you might actually remember, I created a Fujifilm JPEG recipe in an old Canon PowerShot camera a couple of years ago. And if you didn't see that video, go watch that one right here. It kind of worked. I still use it. I'll be using it again very soon actually.